Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it like a doctor giving bad news. Calm, rehearsed, detached. Let's try 30 days without touch, she told me across the counter, her voice smooth, her eyes steady. It wasn't a fight. That made it worse. I just stared at her coffee mug, Lululemon printed along the side, and tried to understand what kind of marriage needed a quarantine. She'd been different for weeks. Woke up early, streaming mindfulness podcasts on Spotify, whispering mantras about energy and purity. She talked about resetting our connection, about not being ruled by physical dependency. I work with my hands every day, a chef at a private restaurant in Charleston. Touch is how I live. Heat, texture, rhythm. The kitchen is my language. So when she said we should stop touching, it felt like she'd asked me to stop breathing. She said it was just an experiment, a cleanse for our intimacy. 30 days, Jake. We'll come back stronger. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that the woman I married still existed somewhere behind all the calm detachment and recycled therapy phrases. But that night, when I reached out just to brush a strand of hair from her face, she flinched, like my hand was something toxic. We went to bed on opposite sides. I listened to the white noise of her phone, some guided meditation voice telling her she was becoming her highest self. I stared at the ceiling and felt like a ghost haunting my own life. By day 5, the house was silent. No music, no laughter. She spent hours in online workshops with her relationship coach, a guy named Damon who ran a whole brand around energetic alignment. I'd see her smiling at her screen, head tilted, like she used to when she looked at me. She said it was spiritual work. But to me, it looked like replacement. I cooked dinner alone that night. Her plate stayed untouched. The food went cold. She didn't even notice. She was too busy taking notes about emotional sovereignty. I washed the dishes, turned off the stove, and told myself I'd last the 30 days. But deep down, I already knew I wouldn't. When warmth becomes negotiation, it stops being love. And that was the first night I realized silence can burn hotter than fire. By the second week, she wasn't my wife anymore. She was a student of something I couldn't see. Every morning, she put on her Lululemon leggings like armor, brewed green tea from Whole Foods, and disappeared into her world of mantras and glowing screens. She called it soul work. I called it distance. She started talking in phrases that didn't belong to her. Words like vibrations, boundaries, energetic detox. She said we had been too physical, that we needed to reconnect beyond the body. I'd just come home from a 14-hour shift, hands burned from hot pans, skin still smelling like smoke and rosemary, and she'd hand me a book about conscious celibacy. I didn't argue. I just nodded. Arguing would have meant I still believed we were having the same conversation. Damon, her so-called coach, became part of our daily life without ever stepping foot in the house. She quoted him more than she talked to me. Damon says attachment is the death of love. Damon believes men need solitude to evolve. It was strange how easily she used his name, like he'd earned a place between us. I watched her light up every time his face appeared on the screen. He smiled like he already knew he'd replaced me. By day 10, she stopped waiting for me to come to bed. She'd sit cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, headphones in, her face bathed in the blue light of another late-night webinar. I'd fall asleep to his voice echoing through her Spotify playlist, telling her to breathe through resistance. It was like sleeping next to a stranger possessed by peace. One evening, I cooked her favorite, roasted chicken with garlic and thyme. I left it on the table under the soft kitchen light. She walked in, smiled absently, said she wasn't eating after sunset anymore. Something about energy retention. She poured herself water, kissed me on the cheek like I was an acquaintance, and went upstairs. That was the moment the quiet shifted. It wasn't loneliness anymore. It was something sharper. A realization that she'd built a wall and called it growth. And I was standing on the outside, holding the last piece of warmth she refused to touch. By the 11th day, I didn't say a word. I just folded my apron, packed a small bag, and watched the sunrise through the kitchen window. Then I walked out, leaving the stove off, the house still, and her experiment unfinished. When I left, there was no note. No message, just the quiet click of the front door and the faint smell of garlic still clinging to my hands. I didn't take much, a few shirts, my knives, and the Jeep Cherokee. The road was empty, washed in pink morning light. For the first time in months, I didn't feel trapped. I just felt done. I drove for hours. No music, no calls. Her Spotify playlists were still synced to my phone. The titles felt ironic now. Grounded energy, higher love, stillness within. I deleted them all. Silence felt cleaner. Somewhere outside Savannah, I stopped at a gas station and realized I hadn't eaten since the night before. Across the street, a Cracker Barrel sign flickered in the heat. I walked in, ordered black coffee and pancakes, and exhaled. The waitress asked if I was traveling. I said no. I was just leaving something behind. That's where I met the owner, an old man with hands like mine, scarred and steady. He said he needed a cook. Nothing fancy, just someone who cared about flavor. I told him I used to run a kitchen. He asked when I could start. I said now. By the end of the week, I had a room above the diner and a rhythm that made sense again. Mornings were spent prepping eggs and biscuits, evenings cleaning down the flat top until it shined. The simplicity felt like medicine. No affirmations, no podcasts, just heat, sound, and the smell of food meant for real people. She texted on the 7th day. You should have explained. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put the phone face down and kept cooking. 2 days later, where are you? Another week, are you okay? I never replied. I wasn't angry. Anger was still connection. I just didn't have any words left to give her. She wanted 30 days without touch. I gave her forever without presence. Each night, after closing, I'd sit by the window and watch the highway lights blur past. It felt like freedom, not loud, not triumphant, just clean, like wiping the last trace of smoke off a blade and realizing it still gleamed underneath. The days at the diner blended together, slow and steady like the hum of the griddle. People came in for biscuits, not wisdom. They didn't talk about boundaries or vibrations. They just wanted their food hot and their coffee refilled. It was honest. That's what I'd been missing, honesty without performance. The owner, Hank, didn't ask questions. He just let me work. Sometimes he'd watch me in the kitchen and nod like he understood something I wasn't saying. He'd been through his own storms. You could tell by the way he moved. Quiet, deliberate, never wasting effort. Maybe that's why he hired me without hesitation. Men like us don't need explanations. We just recognize the silence in each other. After closing, I'd walk out back and sit on the tailgate of my car, watching the neon lights of the Cracker Barrel sign flicker against the night sky. I'd scroll through my phone, sometimes hovering over her name, but never pressing it. Her messages stopped after the 3rd week. The last one said, I hope you find peace. The kind of peace she thought came from detachment, not truth. I started to realize she hadn't betrayed me with a person, she'd betrayed me with an idea. The promise that love could be reprogrammed, purified, managed like a diet from Whole Foods. She replaced connection with theory, touch with theory, me with theory. And Damon? He wasn't the reason she changed. He was just the mirror she wanted to see herself in. Calm, untouchable, enlightened. One night, a delivery driver dropped off supplies late. He recognized me. Didn't you used to run that fine dining spot downtown? I nodded. He said he'd seen a post on her Apple Music profile, some playlist called Healing Through Distance. My stomach tightened. She was still curating her peace while I was here, learning how to breathe again through smoke and grease. But I didn't look it up. I didn't need to. I already knew how her story sounded. Some nights, I'd still wake up reaching for her out of habit, but my hand would land on the cool sheets of the small room above the diner. Empty, quiet, real. That's when I understood I hadn't left her. I just returned to myself. It was almost a month before I heard her name again. A customer came into the diner one afternoon, scrolling through her phone, and said she'd seen my wife on some wellness podcast. That woman's everywhere, she laughed. Talks about emotional fasting, 30 days without physical contact. Says it saved her marriage. I just kept wiping the counter, pretending I didn't hear. Saved. That was the word she used. While I was here scraping burnt bacon off the grill, she was out there selling our collapse as enlightenment. That night, I looked her up. I told myself I wouldn't, but I did. There she was, bright studio lights, a fake fern behind her, voice soft and practiced. She spoke about the freedom of separation, about learning to be whole without needing validation. She smiled when she said, "Sometimes space heals what closeness destroys." The audience clapped. I stared at the screen, then turned it off. That applause was never for healing. It was for performance. The next morning, Hank found me outside before sunrise. He said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Maybe I had. He handed me coffee and said, "Don't chase what already left the table." It sounded simple, but it landed hard. Maybe because I'd spent months serving what was already cold. Work became my silence. I stopped checking my phone entirely. Some nights, after closing, truckers would eat at the counter, talking about home, about the people waiting for them. I listened, not jealous, just aware. They had someone to go back to. I had a kitchen that didn't lie to me. One evening, a woman walked in. Not her, but someone who reminded me of who she used to be. She ordered fried chicken and sat alone, scrolling through Spotify on her phone. When she smiled at something she read, I caught a glimpse of peace that wasn't manufactured. Just real, human stillness. That's when I decided not to hide anymore. I wasn't disappearing. I was redefining what it meant to stay. The next morning, I bought a notebook from the store next to Cracker Barrel. On the first page, I wrote, 30 days without touch taught me something. You don't heal by removing warmth. You heal by protecting it. 2 months passed before her name showed up on my phone again. The message was short. I saw your post. You look different. I didn't have a post. Hank had uploaded a photo to the diner's page, me standing behind the grill, smoke rising, a half smile that looked more like peace than pride. Maybe that's what she meant. Different. Alive. She wrote again a few hours later. Can we talk? I didn't answer. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't open either. Anger means you still care. Silence means you've moved past the noise. A few days later, I saw her face again, this time on a local news segment. Her coach, Damon, had launched a retreat series called The Clean Break. They were partners now, co-hosting events about conscious relationships. The site didn't sting like I thought it would. It just confirmed what I already knew. She hadn't grown. She'd rebranded. That night, the diner was busy. A tour bus had stopped on their way north, and we were short-staffed. Orders came in nonstop, the air thick with heat and noise. I moved like muscle memory, plate after plate, no thought, just rhythm. When the rush finally slowed, Hank handed me a plate of biscuits and said, "You ever think about opening your own place?" I laughed. Maybe one day. But as I looked around the small kitchen, I realized I already had everything I needed. No spotlight. No validation. Just work that felt real. After closing, I drove out past the edge of town to a gas station with a view of the interstate. I sat on the hood of my car and watched the highway stretch into the dark. My phone buzzed again, another message from her. I miss who we were. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote, "We were never broken. We were just mismatched in silence." That was the night I stopped checking for her name altogether. I understood something she never would. Peace isn't found through distance. It's found when you stop chasing the ones who mistake control for clarity. The next morning, I unlocked the diner early. The world outside was still dark, but the first streak of sunlight hit the window. For the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt home. It was late September when she finally showed up. I'd just finished the dinner rush, wiping down the counter, when the bell over the door rang. I didn't look up right away. I thought it was another regular. But then I heard her voice. Soft, cautious. "Jake." She looked smaller somehow. Not thinner, just diminished. Her hair was pulled back, makeup simple. But her eyes, those used to hold fire. Now they were searching for something that wasn't there. She said she'd been driving for hours, needed to see me, to explain. I didn't move from behind the counter, just nodded toward the empty stool. She sat down, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she didn't drink. "I didn't think you'd leave," she said quietly. "I thought you'd wait it out." I told her waiting isn't love. It's surrender dressed as patience. She looked down, twisting the cup between her fingers. "I thought if I reset us, we'd come back stronger." Damon said sometimes distance clears the noise. There it was again, his name, his shadow between us. I didn't react. Just let the silence sit there until it filled the room. She asked if I hated her. I told her no. Hate takes effort, and I'd spent enough of that already. What I felt was lighter, indifference wrapped in calm. She blinked fast, like she wasn't ready for that kind of quiet. Then she said something that almost made me laugh. "I don't even talk to him anymore." It wasn't real. None of it felt real after you left. I looked at her, really looked, and realized she believed it. Maybe for the first time, She wasn't performing. She was just a person, stripped of her stage. When she finally asked if I'd come back, I didn't answer. I just slid her a plate, chicken and biscuits, steam rising between us. Eat, I said. It was the only word that made sense. She took a small bite, eyes wet, whispering that it tasted like home. I turned away, started cleaning again. Some things don't need closure. They just need silence to settle in. Outside, her car waited under the dim lights, engine still running. I didn't watch her leave. Some departures don't need witnesses. She didn't come back for weeks after that night. But her presence lingered like the smell of coffee long after the cup's gone cold. Every morning, I expected to see her Jeep pull into the lot, headlights cutting through the dawn. It never did. And still, I found myself looking up each time the bell rang. Habit, not hope. Then one morning, I opened my phone and saw her face again, not in person, but online. A video clip. Someone had recorded her speaking at a small event. Nothing flashy this time. No studio lights or polished background. She looked tired, almost fragile. She was talking about touch deprivation and how distance isn't always healing. Her voice cracked when she said, "Sometimes we lose people not because they stop loving us, but because they stop waiting for us to wake up." I watched the whole clip in silence, then turned my phone off. She'd finally found the truth, but too late to share it with me. That night, the diner was empty early. I sat in the last booth, lights low, notebook open. I wrote, "Some people build walls to feel safe. Others cook meals to feel real. I just needed someone who understood both." Around closing, Hank walked in, drying his hands. He asked if I was all right. I said I was better than all right, just finally quiet. He smiled, said that kind of peace doesn't come free. He was right. It cost me a marriage, a home, and the illusion that love could survive without warmth. Later that week, a letter came addressed to the diner. No return name, just my first. Inside, a photo, us in our old kitchen, her hand on my arm, both of us laughing. On the back, she'd written, "You were right. Waiting isn't love." No apology, no plea, just truth. I didn't frame it. I didn't throw it away either. I kept it folded in my notebook, between the pages that smelled faintly of grease and ink. Every now and then, I'd see her online again, teaching, talking, softer now. But I never reached out, because she wasn't the villain anymore, and I wasn't the victim. We were just two people who mistook silence for peace. Winter came fast that year. The mornings turned sharp, air thick with frost. The diner felt different too, quieter, slower, like the whole town had gone into hibernation. I'd show up before sunrise, hands numb, breath fogging the window as I unlocked the door. The world outside was still, but inside, I was moving again. Hank started letting me run the kitchen on my own. He said I had the kind of calm people trust. I didn't realize until then how much I'd changed. My silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was steady. When customers came in, I could feel their restlessness, the same kind I used to live in. But now, I wasn't part of that noise. I just served them something warm and real, then watched them leave a little lighter. One night, near closing, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo, her again, but this time she was somewhere far away, maybe the mountains. She looked peaceful, no filters, no stage. Just a line of text under it. "You were my teacher, even when you said nothing." I stared at it for a while, then smiled. Not out of nostalgia, but gratitude. We'd both found what we needed, just in different directions. The next day, a young couple came in arguing. They sat at the counter, voices low but sharp. The girl was crying. The guy just stared at his hands. I made them pancakes, set the plate between them, and said, "Eat first. Words come later." They looked at me like I'd handed them a map. I didn't stay to watch what happened next. Some lessons don't need repetition. That evening, as I locked up, I walked past the old Cracker Barrel sign glowing against the cold sky. I thought about that first morning I'd walked in there, empty, lost, ready to vanish. And how somewhere between the smoke, the dishes, and the silence, I'd found something close to peace. Maybe that's what love is supposed to do in the end. Not break you, but strip you down until what's left finally feels like truth. And the truth was simple. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. Spring crept in quietly, the way healing does. The air softened. The trees outside the diner started showing small green buds. And for the first time in a long while, I noticed the sound of laughter again, mine included. The world hadn't changed much, but I had. The kitchen didn't feel like an escape anymore. It felt like home. Every hiss of the skillet, every clatter of a plate was a reminder that warmth doesn't vanish. It just waits to be reclaimed. Hank handed me a set of keys one morning and said, "You've earned this." He was retiring, moving south to be near his grandkids. He wanted me to take over the diner. I didn't answer right away, just stared at the keys in my palm. For years, I'd given myself to people who wanted everything but me. Now, someone was trusting me to build something of my own. I told him yes. The first day it was mine, I changed only one thing, the name. I painted it myself on the old wooden sign, Stillhouse Cafe. Simple, honest. The kind of place where people could sit, breathe, and feel human again. I kept the same recipes, the same chipped mugs, the same worn-out stools. Because real doesn't need replacing. A few weeks later, a letter came in the mail. No return address, just my name in her handwriting. Inside was a single line. "You were right. Healing isn't about distance, it's about presence." I folded it once and set it behind the register, next to my notebook. I didn't need to answer. Some words exist only to be understood, not returned. That night, I closed late. The highway hummed outside, the lights flickering on the old Cracker Barrel sign across the road. I sat on the hood of my car, the same Jeep that carried me away months ago, and watched the horizon fade. I thought about all the noise we made trying to sound wise, all the books, all the podcasts, all the rules pretending to define connection. In the end, it came down to something simpler. Either you show up with warmth, or you don't show up at all. And for the first time, that truth didn't hurt. It just felt clean, quiet, whole. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.